Years ago, I had a friend in England, and we used to do business. And I would rag him unmercifully about the royal family because with Diana and the divorces and everybody was sleeping with everybody else, I got a big kick out of it. Now he's called me and he's sort of laughing at me because of our governing class and how stupid they are and how they got us into a whole lot of trouble. Because all of this problems with finance is all government sourced. If we had no government, literally had no government from about 2000 on, we'd be in fine fettle. We really would. If we had nobody that did anything. And that's what he points out to me. And I started thinking about it. You know, if we had a ban for the next 20 years on hiring anybody in government from Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, we could probably do ourselves a whole lot of good. Everything that's happened has those people to blame. Think about it. Supreme Court, every single one, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Leaders in Congress, many of them, Harvard. Barney Frank, Harvard. Bill Clinton, Yale. George Bush, Harvard. Barack Obama, Harvard. Bernanke, Harvard. And it isn't that these guys are stupid. They're the smartest guys in the room. But think about it a minute. Russia has a lot of really smart people. And if it weren't for their natural resources and their oil and their gas and all the aluminum and whatever else they're mining over there, diamonds, Russia would be at our doorstep begging for help. They got nothing going on. And if you think about it, they're very smart. What if we didn't hire any more people for just 20 years, gave it a shot and see how we could do without them? It isn't that they're dumb. It's that they have a thought process that is very close to communism, I think. And what they are talking about all the time is bigger government. And every time they touch anything, it turns to crap. Now, Bill Clinton will tell you that he had a surplus. But Bill Clinton wouldn't have had a surplus. If you look at Bill Clinton's budgets for every year, because the president has to submit a budget, never one of those budgets would have brought us into surplus. It was Newt Gingrich, who's not from Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, who was pushing the president and forcing him down a path of less spending. I mean, he didn't want Bill Clinton to look good with his giveaways. So, by cutting back on the budget, Bill Clinton was forced to sign, for instance, the Welfare Act that modified how long you could be on welfare and all that. It was a wonderful act, and it really helped. It got people off of welfare and got them on the employment rolls. But that wasn't Clinton. That was Gingrich forcing Clinton because he had the votes. And Clinton wouldn't have been reelected. And don't forget, Clinton's wife, Yale, tried to put through that absurd health care law. Now, she's a lawyer, and she supposedly knew the law, but she broke the law, the federal law, because she's not an elected official, and yet she was doing government business as sort of an outsider. It's kind of like bringing your mother-in-law in and saying, hey, Mom, why don't you run the FBI for a while? She should have known that. But how dumb is she? And she brought forth that hideous law that cost Clinton his Senate and House because people were so fed up with the nonsense that she was doing. And then there's Bush, Harvard MBA, Masters of Business Administration. He should know as much about business as anyone in the world. But he couldn't figure out that homes were being sold with people lying on their applications. I mean, $1 trillion worth of mortgages goes right under his nose, and he can't spot that. He couldn't figure out to stop it. Then there's John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Harvard. He's supposed to rule on Obamacare. Instead, he makes a muddle of it. The question was, is this certain rule where we are forced to pay for insurance or be fined a tax? Is it a tax or not a tax? Everybody thinks it's not a tax. He says it's a tax for some purposes and not a tax for others. He takes both sides of the coin. Intellectually, this is extremely weak and dishonest. It's the intellectual of a coward, someone who is afraid to make a decision, so he comes down both ways. Then there's Barney Frank, Harvard, one of the most powerful men in Congress. Almost single-handedly put us through the biggest crisis the United States has had since the Great Depression. His intent, like all government officials, to do good. His intent was to put more people into homes, into their own homes. The consequences of his action, fewer people own homes. Department of Education, the intent is to help educate the country. The result, nobody experiments, nobody tries better ways of teaching. We all just follow the line. And as a result of that, the kids are getting second-grade educations and their futures are marginalized. The trouble with the Harvard, Yale, Princeton triumvirate is that the people that graduate from these universities go to the same clubs. They live in the same neighborhoods. And in terms of the United States, they all live in the same area in the United States. Their belief systems overlap. They even use the same language when they author writings in the newspapers. The word of the day is existential. It was in the Wall Street Journal, how many times it shows up. Everything's an existential problem. This kind of nonsense doesn't do the United States any good, because you couldn't take a bunch of people from Florida and run the country. You couldn't take a bunch of people from Nebraska. What it requires is a mix of all people. And we're getting weak politicians from these other states that are bowing to the wisdom of the Harvard, Yale, Princeton crowd. It's not doing the country any good. And I think we need a 20-year ban on anyone from those schools.